Chapter 1, Prologue, to the outside of the world map. This world, where all the countries, oceans, and people we know exist. However, that is not the true form of the world. This world we live in is nothing more than a few small islands floating in the center of an unimaginably colossal lake called Lake Mobius. Not many truly comprehend this fact. Because beyond the borders of that nautical chart lies a cruel and majestic truth that humanity must never touch. Beyond the map's boundaries, across the endless Lake Mobius. What awaits there is the Dark Continent, an untrodden land where the common sense of humanity holds no sway. It is a world of true madness, where grotesque magical beasts roam and nature on an unprecedented scale bears its fangs. Yet, at the same time, it is said that miracles sleep there, infinite resources, elixirs of immortality, and herbs that cure all diseases, miracles that could fundamentally overturn human history. In the past, throughout the history of mankind, elites carrying the prestige of their nations and those filled with ambition challenged this unknown continent time and time again, driven by a thirst for the unknown and endless desire. But great nature did not forgive arrogant humanity. Every challenge to the Dark Continent ended in gruesome failure. After sacrificing hundreds, thousands of lives, only a mere handful managed to return. Moreover, those who returned alive brought back not glory or miracles, but a despair capable of driving humanity to the brink of extinction, bringing it into our world. That is a warning to humanity, which does not know its place. A harsh retaliation from nature. It is the greatest reason why the V5, the modern five continents, which currently rules the world, established a non-aggression treaty strictly forbidding travel to the Dark Continent. That is the existence of the five despairs brought back from the Dark Continent in past expeditions. The five great calamities. These five curses, which bring death upon touch, or irrational suffering worse than death, still hold their breath silently somewhere in our world today, kept under strict guard. Why does humanity become captivated by taboos that invite its own ruin? What I am about to tell is a tale of overwhelming despair spreading on the outside of our world. Chapter 2, The Unidentified Spherical Weapon, Brian the Suherta Republic. A member of the V5 and a great power boasting world-class military and economic strength, was driven by a powerful ambition. What they sought was a herb that cures all diseases said to grow natively on the Dark Continent. This miraculous plant, which might resist incurable diseases, genetic disorders, or even the limits of lifespan itself that rage in our world, was an ultimate treasure that could not only advance medicine but also seize global hegemony. For this historic grand expedition, Suherta spared no national budget, state-of-the-art heavy weaponry, special forces, and hunters who had mastered nin abilities. It was supposed to be a perfect formation gathering the highest intellect and military power humanity possessed. They crossed the raging Lake Mobius and landed on the untrodden land. Their goal was a location approximately 400 kilometers due north from the landing point through a sea of trees. In our world, it's just a few hours drive or flight. But there is the Dark Continent. Take one step, and it's an extreme environment. They advanced through that hellish sea of trees, paying a bloody toll in sacrifices. And at the end of that harsh march, the unit finally reached its destination. A massive ancient labyrinth city suddenly appearing deep within the dense forest. Who built it, when, and for what purpose? This massive ruin complex, bearing no records, maintained a strangely vivid silence despite being the remains of a civilization that should have perished long ago. And just as the prior information stated, the target herb that cures all diseases grew naturally around that labyrinth city. Humanity's dearest wish was finally within reach. That was the moment the remaining squad members were convinced. Then, it appeared before them. The unidentified spherical weapon guarding the mysterious ancient ruins, Brian. The moment they saw its figure, the brains of those veteran elites must have been dominated by incomprehensible terror. Because its appearance was too grotesque and absurd, from the neck down, it was a human torso, and resting where the head should be was simply a giant sphere carved with strange patterns. Was Brian's torso from humans they hunted on the Dark Continent, or from victims? Or does it use something resembling a human as a seedbed? Is it a plant, an autonomous mechanical weapon left by an ancient civilization, or a parasitic organism beyond human understanding? With no means of communication and showing no emotional fluctuation, one could not even sense bloodlust from that sphere. The only clear thing was that they were a merciless system, moving only according to the rule of eliminating foreign bodies approaching the ruins. The battle could never be called a death match. It was a complete and one-sided massacre. The bullets of modern weapons fired by Suherta's elites, and the attacks by non-abilities refined to the limit, meant nothing before Brian. The giant spherical weapon plucked the lives of the humans one after another with the inorganic coldness of weeding a garden. Of that massive Suherta investigation team, only 2 people returned alive to this side of the world. How did they survive, and what did they burn into their eyes? Humanity, seeking the herb to cure all diseases, was not even allowed to touch the miracle, but was merely presented with the overwhelming reality of death. Currently, the V5 evaluation agency designates Brian's threat level as A to A+, considering that the Chimera ants, which plunged our world into a crisis of extinction, had a threat level of B. One can understand how despairing this evaluation is. Brian still silently guards the ancient city deep within the Dark Continent today. As a deformed guardian, a giant sphere resting on a headless body. If they were to leave the ruins for some reason and invade the inside of Lake Mobius where we live, humanity might have no means left to counter them. Chapter 3, The Bloodlust Infecting Monster, the twin-tailed snake Hellbell, the most fundamental desire embraced by humanity, one they can never escape from. That is the fear of aging and the thirst for eternal life. What the Ochima Federation, a member of the V5, sought in the Dark Continent was the miraculous food that embodies that human dream. The ultimate longevity food, nitro rice. A dream food said to overcome even aging and break through the limits of life once consumed. To monopolize this overwhelming blessing, the Ochima Federation formed a massive investigation team consisting of 110 elites. Governed by state-of-the-art equipment and strict discipline, they stepped into the untrodden land with unshakable confidence. Their destination was a bottomless swamp set to spread in the southeastern part of the Dark Continent. However, a swamp on the Dark Continent is not the collection of mud and puddles we know. One misstep is a bottomless bog that swallows life, and countless unknown threats. Long before reaching their destination, the mental and physical limits of the investigation team were already scraped down to the extreme. Before them, it appeared soundlessly. The second calamity, the bloodlust infecting monster, the twin-tailed snake Hellbell. Compared to the giant spherical weapon Brian, its appearance is much smaller, seemingly just a snake with a bifurcated tail at first glance. However, the despair brought by this monster was not due to physical destructive power. The true horror of Hellbell lies in its highly demonic nature of fundamentally destroying the mind and sanity of its prey. The ability Hellbell possesses is the infection of bloodlust. Those who encounter this monster and touch its fangs or its peculiar nature suddenly lose the restraints of their sanity and become dominated by abnormal, indiscriminate bloodlust. Imagine it. The comrades in arms with whom you entrusted your back, shared meals, and stood together against the terrors of the Dark Continent just moments ago. Suddenly, with bloodshot eyes, they bare their fangs like beasts and attack you. Muzzles are aimed not at unknown magical beasts, but between the eyes of allies. Polished nin abilities are wielded to tear apart the flesh of close friends. Even agonizing screams of "why?" or "stop" are swallowed by the wave of infecting bloodlust, becoming the trigger for further madness. There are no tactics, no discipline, not even human dignity. It was a banquet of hell, simply killing each other until all lives were extinguished. The swamp was dyed red with their own blood. Of the 110 elites of the Ochima Federation, a staggering 99 lost their lives due to this maddening mutual slaughter. Hellbell itself did not devour them. Hellbell merely pulled the trigger. It quietly watched the humans kill each other with the cold eyes of a snake. Only a mere 11 survived the hellish tragedy and barely managed to return to this side of the world. However, their minds were already completely broken. With the indelible memory of brutally murdering their comrades with their own hands and the remnants of madness, they were no longer in any condition to lead normal social lives. The price of seeking the ultimate longevity food was the cruel fate of experiencing infinite hell while still alive. Currently, the threat level of Hellbell determined by V5 is A to A+. It is ranked at the highest level, equivalent to Brian. If even one of these twin-tailed snakes were to enter a massive city where millions of our people densely reside, what would happen? The infection of bloodlust would spread from person to person in the blink of an eye. Military and police would not function, and humanity would turn the city into a sea of blood by its own hands. The worst biological weapon that causes society itself to collapse from the inside, against which military force can never resist. The Dark Continent mocks the limits of humanity in the cruelest way, as if exploiting human greed. Chapter 4, The Equivalent Exchange of Pleasure and Life, the Human-Keeping Beast Pap. The history of humanity is also a history of acquiring energy. To be richer, more convenient, and more powerful. The reason why the Bigorasi Union, a V5 nation, turned its eyes to the Dark Continent was exactly its bottomless thirst for that ultimate energy. What they sought was a miraculous ore, the unmanned rock, which is said to generate an enormous amount of electricity semi-permanently just by being submerged in water. A single stone could provide power for a major metropolis. It would completely transform the world's energy problems, and even the power balance between nations. This stone was meant to be, quite literally, the power to rule the world for humanity. The Bigorasi Union dispatched a massive investigation team consisting of top-tier hunters and military personnel to the Dark Continent, staking national prestige and a vast budget. Their goal lay beyond a mountain range so steep it pierced the clouds, towering in the northeastern part of the Dark Continent. Unimaginably rugged terrain, a completely unpredictable and harsh environment, and unknown threats lurking in every shadow. Before even reaching the land where the unmanned rock slumbered, the physical and mental strength of the expedition team was ground down to its absolute limit, and after sacrificing so much and crossing the mountains of death, what awaited them was not the brilliant future promised by the unmanned rock. There existed the third calamity. An unknown entity that equally exchanges pleasure and life, the human-keeping beast, Pap. Pap's terror is not the destruction through overwhelming violence like Brian, nor the madness through bloodlust like Hellbell. What they bring is the thorough deprivation of human dignity. True to its moniker, to Pap, humans are neither terrifying invaders nor equal adversaries. To them, humans are nothing more than a source of sustenance to be consumed. Pap's ecology is overwhelmingly quiet, and desperate. They pierce a mysterious tube-like object into the heads of captured humans. However, there is no physical agony or suffering there. Through the tube, Pap directly pours ultimate pleasure into the human brain. It is an absolute, irresistible slumber of bliss that no drug or euphoria in our world could ever reach. The elites, wandering the Dark Continent in extreme fear and exhaustion, the moment they are given that pleasure, let go of all their will to fight, their attachment to survival, and even their purpose of returning home. And while the humans are fully immersed in ultimate happiness, Pap slowly sucks the marrow of life, such as life force and aura, from their bodies down to the very last drop. The sight of the victims witnessed by those who followed, or those who barely managed to escape, was more gruesome than any hell in this world. The corpses of comrades rolling in the crevices of rock walls and roofs were all deprived of their life force, turned into completely dried up mummies like dead trees. However, the expressions floating on those dried faces were not of agony. They all died wearing an ecstatic, melting smile, as if they had obtained all the happiness in the world. Proud hunters and robust soldiers, merely kept as a nutritional source, having their lives exploited while smiling. The cruel reality that humanity, which firmly believed it stood at the top of the food chain, was treated completely as an inferior organism. Within the large squad dispatched by the Bigorasi Union, those who could avert their eyes from this apparent reality and return alive on the verge of madness were only 7. They could not even obtain a fragment of the unmanned rock. Currently, Pap's threat level by V5 is rated as A. If this human-keeping beast were unleashed upon our world, what would happen? People might not flee in terror, but rather willingly go to have tubes pierced into their heads in pursuit of that irresistible ultimate pleasure. A quiet extinction at the end of sweet pleasure, rather than a chain of violence. Through the beast named Pap, the Dark Continent coldly points out how fragile and fleeting human dignity truly is. Chapter 5, Codependence of Desire, the gaseous life form I, the source of all liquids, a boundless spring that moistens all things. If a nation could monopolize this miracle water, which is the base of all liquids existing in this world, it would control the world's economy and its very lifeline. What the Membo Republic, a member of the V5, sought in the Dark Continent with bottomless ambition was exactly that ultimate resource, the 3 liquid ore. The Membo Republic organized its own elite investigation team, bypassing the Hunter Association, mobilizing the nation's total power. Learning from past failures, they gathered specialists adaptable to any environment, not just physical combatants, and set sail for the Dark Continent in perfect condition. They aimed for the deeper, untrodden territory of the Dark Continent, beyond human comprehension. However, what they encountered at the end of their quest was not the water of blessing, but an incorporeal nightmare that devours the human heart itself. The fourth calamity. The codependence of desire, the gaseous life form I. It is not a weapon with overwhelming violence like Brian, nor a predator incorporated into an ecosystem like Pap. The horror of I lies in its incomprehensibility. It is a gaseous life form possessing almost no physical substance. Bullets, blades, and perhaps even powerful nin abilities mean nothing to this existence that drifts like mist or fog. And the despair brought by I is exceptionally alien and horrifying compared to the other calamities. They do not parasitize the human body, but human desire. In the extreme conditions of the Dark Continent, the members of the investigation team must have each harbored strong emotions. The natural human cravings like I want to return alive. I want to find the 3 liquid ore. I want to achieve more merit than anyone, or I want to escape from terror. I possesses a highly demonic nature of codependence on the desires and wishes at the bottom of the heart. The truth of exactly what exchanges took place within the Minbo Republic's investigation team is shrouded in deep mist. However, only the gruesome results left behind eloquently tell of the hell that occurred there. The victims' corpses discovered later no longer retained a human shape. Crushed tightly like a wrung-out rag by a massive force, with limbs and torsos twisted multiple times, tangled in spirals, a mass of flesh unbearable to look at directly. It was not as if they were twisted off by physical force, but rather an eerie death, as if the space itself was distorted as the price of some irrational rule. What did they wish for, and what did they offer as compensation? Was their life, or the lives of their comrades, ruthlessly crushed as the price for fulfilling their desires? Of the large investigation team from the Minbo Republic, only 3 survived to return. Moreover, their minds and bodies were completely collapsed, turned into empty invalids unable to even utter decent words. Currently, V5's threat level for I is the highest rank, A to A+, like the other calamities. However, regarding I, an even more spine-chilling suspicion for us humans is whispered. That is the suspicion that this calamity is already hiding and rooted in this side of the world where we live. Within the Zoldyck family, renowned as a family of assassins. Aluka, strictly confined in one room, and the entity lurking within her called Nanika. A godlike power that can grant any wish if 3 requests are fulfilled. However, as compensation for that wish, a cruel rule of equivalent exchange ruthlessly crushes the lives of those around them. And above all, the word Nanika utters as an affirmative response is I. If the true identity of Nanika is the gaseous life form I brought back from the Dark Continent, our world has already embraced a bomb of desire that demands countless lives as compensation, not knowing when it will detonate. The darkness of the Dark Continent is by no means an event on the other side of the nautical chart. As long as humans have endless desires, this calamity may already be quietly waiting for the next wish right next to us. Chapter 6, A Bottomless Despair Disguised as Hope, the Immortal Disease Zobi. Another tremendous ambition humanity has dreamed of since ancient times. That is the pinnacle of alchemy, turning base metals into gold and freely manipulating all substances. What the Kukanyu Kingdom, a great power of the V5, sought in the abyss of the Dark Continent was the miraculous item touching that divine realm. The Metallion, the alchemical plant, said to cure any poison and transmute metal at will. If they could bring back this plant, the world's economy and medical common sense would be fundamentally overturned. To monopolize that overwhelming wealth and power, the Kukanyu Kingdom sent a massive hunter investigation team, staking the nation's prestige, into the untrodden land. The exact route they took is no longer certain. The harsh nature of the Dark Continent ruthlessly scraped away their records, their pride, and even their lives. And, before they could rely on the blessings of the alchemical plant Metallion, the investigation team encountered it. The fifth calamity. A bottomless despair disguised as hope, the immortal disease, Zobi. Whereas the giant spherical weapon Brian, the bloodlust infecting Hellbell, the human keeping Pap, and the desire twisting I were unknown organisms or abnormal entities, Zobi is the disease itself, lacking physical form. Firearms and sharpened nin abilities were completely powerless against an invisible pathogen. The most terrifying point of this disease is its demonic nature of granting immortality, which humanity has thirsted for since the dawn of history, in the most cruel and blasphemous form. Those infected with Zombie can never die. Whether they reach the limit of their lifespan or suffer fatal wounds, their flesh is forcefully kept alive. However, it is not the sweet immortality we dream of, living eternally while young and beautiful. The infected completely lose their ego, sanity, and intellect as humans. All that remains is an intense sense of starvation. And to satisfy that hunger, shockingly, they begin to devour their own flesh. They tear off their own arms with their teeth and swallow the meat into their stomachs. But because they are immortal, the devoured flesh abnormally proliferates and regenerates as mutated cells. Then they ravenously devour their own regenerated flesh again. Without even taking the lives of others, in a completely closed energy cycle, they simply become a perpetual motion machine that solely devours itself in self-sufficiency. There is no joy or sorrow there, only the hell of endless self-predation. Of the massive investigation team of the Kokonyu Kingdom, the number who returned alive to this side of the world was only one. Yes, just one. Moreover, that single surviving hunter had already developed the Zombie disease. Currently, he is strictly isolated and confined in the deepest part of an international underground facility under V5's control. About 50 years have passed since he was secured. For half a century, he has been given no food or water from the outside. Yet, he continues to live in the dim isolation room at this very moment. Completely having lost his human heart, simply and solely devouring his own flesh. That was the cruel answer from the Dark Continent to humanity, which dreamed of immortality. V5's threat level for the Zombie disease is B+2A. It is slightly lower than the other calamities only because there are currently no signs of a pandemic, the infected person is limited to one, and it is strictly managed. However, if this pathogen were to leak into the outside world and cause human-to-human infection, what would happen? Humanity wouldn't even be allowed to go extinct, the world would be filled with immortal monsters who have lost their egos and continue to devour their own flesh. The fact that one cannot die is this terrifying. Zombie is the ultimate despair that steals away even the absolute rest of death. Chapter 7, The Future of Humanity, or Its Ruin. Brian, Hellbell, Pap, I, and Zombie. These 5 calamities are symbols of absolute despair that we humans can never resist, no matter how much we advance science or master the superhuman power known as Nen. The immeasurably vast nature of the Dark Continent thrust a merciless warning at humanity, who presumptuously crossed the borders of the nautical chart. There is not a shred of compassion there to recognize humans as the lords of creation. In that terrifying, unprecedented ecosystem, we are nothing more than prey, seabeds, or powerless livestock kept and given pleasure. Faced with this hair-raising reality and the damage of the calamities brought back, the leaders of the V5 modern 5 continents, standing at the pinnacle of the world, harbored a deep terror like never before. Thus, they designated the Dark Continent as an inviolable domain that humanity must not involve itself with, and concluded a treaty strictly forbidding all travel. It serves as the sole and absolute breakwater for humanity to continue existing in this world as humans. However, as the long history of mankind proves, no matter how strong the rules or chains, they could not completely bind the human thirst for exploration and bottomless desire. Now, decades of silence are about to be broken. The emerging nation, the Kakan Empire, suddenly established a historic grand policy and proudly declared its advance to the Dark Continent to the whole world. Placing beyond Netero, the son of the former Hunter Association chairman Isaac Netero, as the general director, they are about to pry open the door to that world of madness once again, on a massive scale incomparable to the expeditions challenged by past great powers. Epilogue, to the next challengers, the supergiant immigration ship built by the Kakan Empire, the Black Whale. Inside the ship, royals burning with blood-stained ambitions for succession, countless pro-hunters dreaming of striking it rich, and hundreds of thousands of ordinary citizens, ignorant of the true horrors of the Dark Continent and believing only in the hope of a new world, are crowded together. They are about to step into that hell, where even the elites of V5 went mad and were wiped out in the past, on an unprecedented scale in human history. Neither V5 nor the Hunter Association can stop this massive surge of human desire anymore. What awaits them? Will it be infinite hope and miraculous resources that will finally elevate human civilization to the next dimension? Or an unknown despair that far surpasses the 5 great calamities, ending human history in an instant? Only one thing is certain. Beyond Lake Mobius, the giant continent shrouded in pitch black darkness is still quietly waiting for new prey to cross the boundary on their own. The thirst for the unknown is sometimes heavier than life, and far too cruel. Will there be anyone among the next challengers who can return alive to this side of the world and maintain their sanity? The forbidden taboo that humanity must not touch. The true terror of the Dark Continent is about to reveal its true nature right before our eyes.